Hello, good morning. Welcome to our webinar, From Policy to Reality, Promising Practices for Inclusive Living, co-hosted by EASPD and our members, the Alliance of Organizations working with the disabled people in Moldova. I'll just wait a little bit for you all to join. And while you're doing that, I'll give you some logistical information. This webinar is being recorded with the audio stream both in English and in Romanian, and will be made available online after the webinar. We're also being live streamed onto Facebook. We have interpretation for this webinar. You can activate it by clicking on the interpretation button on the toolbar at the bottom of the page and selecting either English or Romanian. So if you have any questions at any point, you can speak in either English or Romanian. We also have captioning, and you can activate that by clicking the More button and clicking the Show Subtitle button on the More tab. So again, thank you for joining us for our webinar on inclusive living. The aim of this webinar is to give you a little inspiration of promising practices that support the inclusive living of persons with disabilities. So we have 3 practices today that we'll share with you. And we really encourage you to take this time to ask as many questions as you want. We have a little bit longer as unfortunately one of our speakers wasn't able to make it today. So it means you have even longer to ask some questions to those who are presenting. So we will start a little bit with the international policy context and an EU policy context before moving on to 3 national examples from Greece, Hungary, and Slovakia. They will present their national context and then also their promising practice. But with that, I will move over to our co-hosts to welcome you. Galina, the floor is yours.
Bună ziua, stimați colegi ai Alianței Organizațiilor pentru Persoane cu
Dear colleagues, good morning, dear colleagues of EASPD. We are truly honored to co-host this event. It is a first tentative, and I'm hopeful that we'll continue this type of events that will strengthen and consolidate the capacity of both alliances of members of these organizations, which carry out activity at the national level as well as on international level in order to ensure the rights of the people with disabilities. The logistical aspects Rachel already mentioned regarding the interpretation, with the possibility to follow us on the online platforms. All experiences that we have identified as interesting and who present innovations in terms of best practices of support for people with disabilities, we have identified in partnership with EASPD, and we consider that some of them will be very interesting and very helpful, and we thank EASPD colleagues and other countries who have been often to provide them to us. We are in the process of developing and diversification of services of support for disabled people in order to take over best practices and adapt them to the local context. These are my opening remarks, and I wish everyone success during this event. Thanks to all.
Living. We have in the UNCRPD Article 19 that establishes the right of all persons with disabilities to be able to live independently in their community where they choose. And we have in development some UN guidelines on deinstitutionalization, and also there is a EU policy framework with an inclusive living strategy. So I hand over to my colleague, Konstantina, who is Senior Policy Officer at EASPD, who will talk to us a little bit about this. So to you, Konstantina.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you everyone for inviting me in this webinar. So I'm Konstantina Leventi, and I work at the EASPD. I'm part of the policy team, and one of my area of focus is on inclusive living, or independent living and inclusion in the community for persons with disabilities. I will just share very quickly a PowerPoint presentation that I have developed. As mentioned already, can you see it? Because I see it like a double. Okay, great. Today I will talk to you about the different key policy frameworks, first from an international point of view, and then from a European point of view, that lead the way towards inclusive living for persons with disabilities in the years to come. So first of all, as I already mentioned also by Rachel, we cannot start from anywhere else than the UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and mainly Article 19 on realizing the right of persons with disabilities to live independently and be included in the community. So since the ratification of the convention that also happened in the EU in 2010, we have changed the way that we perceive disability, and we have changed the way that we design policies, we develop policies. So first of all, we have changed the way that we are viewing disability. So right now, what we are focusing on is that we are focusing on adapting the environment around a person with a disability in order to help them enjoy their rights. And secondly, as I mentioned previously, we have changed the way that we think about disability, the way that we design, we develop policies, and we develop support systems. So right now, we no longer talk about care services that are there to protect people, but we are talking about care services that they are there in order to support, to empower people to realize their rights. And one of these rights is also living independently and being included in the community, as is the topic of this webinar. So since the ratification of the convention, we are talking about a paradigm shift. So we are talking about moving away from a medical social approach towards a human rights-based one. So what type of services this type of approach demands, requires? So we are talking about services that are focused on the individual needs and wishes of individuals, what we call person-centered services. We are talking about services that are driven by their users. So that means that we are supporting individuals to make decisions when it comes to choosing and controlling what type of support they are going to receive or who is going to support them, but also supporting these individuals to make decisions not only on a day-to-day basis, but also on more life-changing decisions. And these services, of course, need to be developed within the community, and they also need to collaborate with mainstream actors, thus further promoting inclusion. These services are focusing also on improving their quality, but they are not focusing on improving, yes? Yeah. Oh.
Rachel, try to switch channels because we cannot hear you on the English channel.
I'm sorry, I don't know what's happening. I will try to fix it. Maybe I will stop share. Yes, and start again from the beginning. So it seems that it doesn't work. However, let's see if I do it like that. Is it okay for you? Okay, great. So I was in this slide. Great. As I mentioned previously, these services are promoting inclusion. And when we are talking about quality of these services, we are not just talking about measuring on looking on improving the quality of the service alone. So for example, the structures that this service is based, or the processes that this service is using, but we are talking about services that are looking also on the outcome. And that means that they are looking on what impact do they have on the quality of the life of the people they support. And this is further also further highlighted on the different EU initiatives that we will be talking about today. So first of all, when it comes to the European policy context, we have the Disability Rights Strategy that was released last year. And this is also a continuation of the previous Disability Rights Strategy. And we see on this strategy that it recognizes that still, many people live in institutions and they are isolated from living in the community, and they are also not empowering on controlling their lives and making decisions on their day-to-day lives. And that is happening because we do not have adequate community-based services, but we also have limited availability of support for families or other support schemes such as personal assistance services. The Disability Rights Strategy, it also recognizes and highlights that we need a different landscape of community-based services. And here we talk about services that are continuously improving their quality, that they are accessible, that are centered around the individual needs and wishes, that are affordable, and they are based in the community, and they are also supporting the families. So we don't only need this type of community-based services, but we also need to develop mainstream services that are inclusive for all and accessible to all. From the European Disability Rights Strategy, I would like to briefly mention two initiatives. First of all, by 2023, the European Commission will issue a guidance toward member states, and this guidance will will provide them with guidelines on how they can further enable persons with disabilities to live in housing that is supportive and accessible within the community, but also to live in their homes if they choose so. Secondly, by 2024, the European Commission will issue a framework for what they call social services of excellence for persons with disabilities. And this will focus on improving the quality of services, but also tackling some challenges that have to do with staff, such as staff shortages, not having adequately skilled workforce, but also what the social care sector is currently facing a challenge when it comes on job opportunities that are not that attractive. Briefly also mentioning another EU policy initiative, which is the European Pillar of Social Rights that was launched in 2010, and that in a way leads towards a more social Europe. From this, I would like to refer to these principles. In general, it includes different principles, but the main two ones that are also interesting for our audience today are principles 17 and 18. So for example, on Principle 17, we see that it refers to the right of persons with disabilities to enabling services. And on Principle 18, we see that the pillar is mentioning that everyone has the right to affordable support in the community. And this support, it should focus on the development of home and community-based care rather than other models. Lastly, we have another two initiatives that are also strongly linked with further realizing the right of persons with disabilities to live independently and being included in the community. And this is the EU Care Strategy that is going to further support the development of sustainable long-term care. And this will further ensure that persons with disabilities, but also older people, have access to quality services, and it will also address issues that have to do with formal and informal carers. Lastly, we have the EU Child Guarantee, and this was launched also recently, if I'm not mistaken, the previous year. And this further focuses on children in need. And what are these children in need is that there are children that are further excluded and children that they are at the risk of poverty. So the EU Child Guarantee, the objective of this EU Child Guarantee is to ensure access to 5 essential services, and that also includes housing, and it includes actions in order to prevent institutionalization of children and to further support children to live in a family-based and community-based environment. Rachel mentioned it previously, and this is my conclusion, that the UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities the previous month launched draft guidelines on the institutionalization, including in emergencies, and these will provide guidance to the state parties that have ratified the convention on how they can further support in realizing the right of persons with disabilities to live independently and be included in the community. Also important to mention for anyone that would like to submit a written feedback on these guidelines, that it is open until the end of June. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Konstantina. So EASPD will be responding to that call, and we look forward to seeing what the result of that is. I also would like to say that we'll be continuing the conversation about quality services at our next conference in Malta on the 13th and 14th of October. So if you want to join us in that conversation, we invite you to come to Malta. Keep an eye out, as registrations will be opening very soon. Does anybody have any questions for Konstantina? If you do, please either type them into the Q&A box that you can find on the bottom of your screen, or if you raise your hand, we can then promote you to speaker and you can ask your question directly. I'll just give you a few minutes if you want to type any questions. It's good to see that we have lots of people in the chat who are identifying themselves. Please feel free to talk amongst yourselves. And if nobody's got any questions, we will move on to our first practice. So for this, we're going to Greece and Petagma Association, and they'll be talking a little bit about their supported living flats for persons with disabilities. So Vasilis, I hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Hi Rachel, hi to everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the opportunity to share our practice with you. And I will start sharing my screen. Do you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So I will start saying a few words about Petagma. Petagma is an association that was founded in 2002 by a group of families, persons with intellectual disabilities, who wanted to find an answer to this question that they were facing: what would happen to my child when I will not be able to offer him or her a good life? At that time, in 2002, in Greece, there were only 2 options. The one option was like to be placed in a big institution, and the other option would be like to be supported by the family members without like any kind of support from the state. So that's how we started. People like traveled abroad and they visited other similar initiatives in the UK mainly, who had the support of an organization from UK. It was called like PACT UK at that time. Now it's called Lives Through Friends. It was like a good friend of us now, Bob Roach, who supported us very much in the beginning. So that's how we started. That was like in 2002. And now we operate like 3 supported accommodation flats where like 4 people live in each flat. And we are based, we're based in Athens. I will start like saying a few words about like the Greek context. Konstantina explained very well the international context. I will say a few words about like the Greek frameworks here. We have like in Greece recently, there was a National Disability Action Plan that was developed quite recently. It was developed in 2020 and it has an horizon of implementation until 2027. And we have like the National DI strategy and accompanying action plan that was developed by the Ministry of Labour in Greece in collaboration with EASPD.
Sorry, Vasilis, I think we're having the same problem as Konstantina. Could you just reshare your screen and we'll see if it resets it?
Okay.
I assume you're showing another slide. Sorry about that.
Don't worry.
No?
Yeah, that's better.
So yes, I was talking about like the Greek context, and I was talking about the National DI strategy and the action plan that was developed like by the Ministry of Labour in collaboration with the EASPD. And like in both these frameworks, inclusive living is quite clearly promoted, and like there's support of like options for people with disabilities to live in the community is promoted, and like the closing down of institution is like clearly stated there. So what do we have now in Greece? In Greece at the moment, we have like 33 organizations that are operating 81 flats and 81 supported accommodation facilities, where like 400 people with intellectual disabilities live at the moment. As you can understand, this number is like very small related to the total number of people with intellectual disabilities in Greece. And a quite new initiative from the state, which is obviously in the right direction, is also like that we have a legal framework now for personal assistance. And this is like a new thing, and we will have a pilot implementation in the next, starting of like from this September, hopefully, where people with intellectual disabilities and other disabilities will have the right to have personal assistance. So this is like, these are more or less where we are at the moment. I'm trying to, do you see now the next slide? Good, good. So, okay. So I will move to the next slide. What I would like to say about Petagma is like that Petagma is like, is a result of a collective effort of like many people who have contributed to for many years. And it is like, I could say that Petagma is a definition of a grassroots organization, an example of an active civil society of people who were facing a common challenge and who decided not to wait for others to find a solution. They took the situation into their own hands and worked together towards a common cause. A key feature of our association is a consistent commitment to high standards of services. And this is achieved through like ongoing monitoring and supervision. Also from the beginning, we understood that it is not enough to create a model of good practice behind like closed doors. It is the openness, the community, it's the extroversion that, and the constant focus to social inclusion that makes the difference and that really safeguards the quality of the services and the quality of the life of the people we support. So here I will present like some fundamental principles which give us direction and like guide our everyday work. So for us, it's important, like what is important is like to support people live in places that they call a home. For us, it is also important to have like, for people to have like choice, always have choice and self-direction. Community membership is like a very important aspect of our work, and of relationships, like how people relate with other people, and also like to try to maintain a flexibility, because sometimes it's very good to have like quality, but it's good to combine quality with flexibility, because otherwise it can be something like very strict and not like tailored to the needs of the people. I will share like now a short video so you can have like a first-hand like look of what we do.
Ας πούμε, ο τρόπος που υποστηρίζουμε τα άτομα είναι...
Can you see it?
Yep, see and hear it. It's great. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so I played.
Τους υποστηρίζουμε όσο χρειάζονται, ούτε λιγότερο ώστε να μείνουν εκτεθειμένοι σε κινδύνους, αλλά ούτε περισσότερο ώστε να τους στερήσουμε τη δυνατότητα να κάνουν πράγματα που μπορούν να κάνουν.
Με συγχωρείτε, θέλω να περάσω μια στιγμή λίγο ακόμα. Αυτό εδώ πέρα είναι ένα δικό μου ημερολόγιο. Κάθε μέρα εγώ εδώ πέρα έχω και κάνω δουλειές διάφορες. Για ψώνια στο φούρνο, δηλαδή για ψωμί στο φούρναρι.
Και περιοδικά μαθαίνω παίρνεις.
Παίρνω μάλιστα, υψαλίζω και κανένα περιοδικό για το φίλο μου το Λεωνίδα, γιατί αυτός διαβάσει περιοδικά εδώ πέρα. Δεν ξέρω και τι άλλο ψωμί, πάντως άλλο τι ψωμί όμως.
Τι θέλεις?
Μαύρο ή άσπρο? Δεν θέλω μαύρο, θέλω άσπρο ψωμί.
Ωραία, ένα άσπρο ψωμί. Με σουσάμι θα πεις συγχωρείς. Ό,τι θέλεις εσύ.
Μήπως έχετε και κανένα άλλο, όχι εκτός, αλλά άσπρο ψωμί χωρίς σουσάμι?
Χωρίς σουσάμι, ναι.
Υπάρχει. Τότε αφού υπάρχει, εγώ είπα ότι θέλω μόνο ένα άσπρο ψωμί χωρίς σουσάμι μόνο. Αυτό, τίποτα άλλο. Ό,τι θέλει δηλαδή το παιδί. Και πόσο κάνει, εδώ έχω.
Ορίστε.
Εδώ λέτε ξανά τα λεφτά. Πόσο κάνει, είπα?
70 λεπτά είναι.
70 λεπτά είναι.
Τότε... Και να σου δώσω και την αποδειξούλα σου.
Αυτά λοιπόν.
Εντάξει.
77 είναι τα λεφτά και... Άντε, εντάξει, ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ.
Δεν έχει κανένα περιοδικό. Έχει.
Και τα ρέστα σου.
Ευχαριστώ.
Καλά.
Δεν αντιμετωπίζουμε τους ανθρώπους που ζουν εδώ ως μια ενιαία ομάδα με κοινά χαρακτηριστικά, αλλά τους αντιμετωπίζουμε ως ξεχωριστές και μοναδικές προσωπικότητες.
Η μητέρα μου πέθανε τώρα τον Ιανουάριο. Ζούσα με τη μητέρα μου εγώ παιδεία. Πάνω είχαμε σπίτι. Αλλά χαθήκανε οι γονείς και ο αδελφός μου με πήρε και πήγαμε στο σπίτι. Αλλά εγώ έμεινα μόνη μου εγώ. Δούλευε το πρωί, μου φύγε το πρωί και με ερχόταν το βράδυ. Και τι να κάνω, να μου δεν δίνα και να μου τύχει τίποτα και να... Γιατί εγώ έχω αδυναμία στα νεύρα. Και φοβάμαι μήπως μου τύχει τίποτα. Αυτά και στο τέλος ήρθα εδώ πέρα. Από την αρχή συνήθισα ωραία. Ας πούμε, δεν μου έτυχε να στεναχωρεθώ με τίποτα, να πεις, ας πούμε, ότι όχι. Από την αρχή ήταν πάρα πολύ όμορφα. Είμαι ενθουσιασμένη. Αυτά.
Εντάξει, έτοιμο το τραπεζάκι, το τραπέζι.
So I don't know. I think that was it. I think you had like it's better had like a first impression of what we do, because it's different to listen to me talking and like seeing also what we do more or less. So I will start now talking a bit like more in details about like these principles that I explained in the beginning. So the first thing is like first essential principle for us is to create and support people living in real homes, not supported accommodation arrangements or whatever. Sometimes we use these like terms when we communicate with like the industries, etc. But when we speak between us, we always use the term home. And what is home? I think for all of us, it is the same. It is a place where we feel safe, where we feel relaxed, and where we feel free to be ourselves. It is the place where we arrive after a busy day in the community and we take a deep breath and we say, I can relax now. So we support people living in arrangements which are typical of those in which persons without disabilities live. Okay. And for me, size matters, because some people say it doesn't matter. But I think that none of us would like to live like with 8, 9 more people in one place. So for me, I mean, like it's quite clear. Support people living in homes like that you can find around in your neighborhood where you live, where people and families and people live, not have like special arrangements for people. So this is like some photographs of the flats where people are supported from their everyday life. I mean, you saw the video as well, but like these are some like funny moments. So another ingredient, essential ingredient for our service is that we value choice and control. Individuals are supported to communicate their preferences and their needs, to take everyday choices and plan for the future. We know that these self-advocacy skills, they don't always come naturally, but they need some time, support in acquiring this ability. So we run self-advocacy groups on a regular basis where all our tenants participate, and they are trained first to know themselves, their strong points, their preferences, their responsibilities, also to know their rights according to the UN Convention, and finally to learn how to articulate, how to communicate their rights and their choices. Here, like, again, some photos like related with like choice and control and self-advocacy groups. So another key principle for us is community membership. At this point, I think we need to make a clear distinction between the notion of being in the community and being part of the community. Being in the community points only to physical presence. People can live in the community and experience segregation, isolation, and loneliness. We support our tenants to fully participate in the mainstream of community life, according to their personal choice and preferences. Individuals have the right, have the opportunity to join clubs, to join groups, to join organizations, to use local community resources and mainstream services. They are out in the community every day. They go shopping, they go to cafeterias, they go to tavernas, they go to museums, cinemas. They go to a local library, to a local swimming pool, and they enjoy, you know, all the resources of the community. For us, actually, community membership means being known as an individual, as a unique person, and not as a label, not as a consumer of services or the recipient of a charity. And I always feel great when I go out with the people we support, and everyone in the neighborhood, the butcherman, the pharmacist, or the person living next door, they know the people we support and they call them by their first name. I think this is like the, you know, this is how I understand that we are doing something good here. Again, some photographs from like everyday activities, like participation in everyday life, in community life, not only in life, in settings that are restricted to persons with disabilities. So, another thing that is important for us is like relationships. We believe that relationships are a key to a good life. So the first thing is to maintain existing relationships. Okay, individuals have families, have friends, have schoolmates, have neighbors. They don't come from the moon to the flat where they are living now. So it is essential to keep these relationships alive because they enrich life and they safeguard quality and safety. Paid staff can never replace natural, loving relationships, but what we can do is facilitate the maintenance of existing relationships and the development of new, meaningful relationships with flatmates, with family members, with other community members, with neighbors, etc. New relationships are always built around common interests. So that is where you start from, as long as you know the preferences, the inclinations, the hobbies of each person that we support. We, again, here some like photographs from people like enjoying like meaningful relationships. And the last thing that I would like to talk about is like the importance of like maintaining some kind of flexibility to the support that we offer. The core, let's say, of the approach is person-centered planning. That's where we start from. We sit together around the table, together with the person we support, together with important people around him or her, friends, family, staff, and together we design a person-centered plan. So, okay, this is one thing to develop the person-centered plan, but sometimes like reality, what has shown us is like that the more important thing is like to monitor the implementation of the person-centered plan and generally to monitor the quality of the support that we provide. So what we do, we have like an ongoing system of monitoring. We have like continuous training of staff. We have like weekly, monthly team meetings and weekly supervisions, monthly meetings with families and the people we support. And we have like a system of ensuring like quality. Because good quality and quality of services are together. Because what good life quality means individualized support, means relationships, mean educational and recreational programs. It means like self-advocacy groups, and means like having a good physical and physiological and health well-being. So what we do, as I said before, staff training and supervision continues, family counseling, family meetings with families. We support also like a new initiative that we have done is like we support like the siblings of people who live here to be together and work together and support like and develop like circles of support, informal circles of support for our tenants. And of course, as I said before, it's like a continuous training of our staff. So a few last words from my side. What have we learned from our work so far is that like we need like a bottom-up and needs-based approach. We need to preserve some core values. We need to preserve natural relationships. We need to present a positive role model, and we need to work together again on a continuous base towards a shift of power. Sometimes this is like a delicate issue sometimes, but I think it's time to reconsider the role of professionals, not as experts, but who knows what is best always for the people that they support, and they always know what is best for the families. And we need a paradigm shift there, where professionals take the role of the facilitator, take the role of the advocate of the person. So we are working towards this direction. I think this is what I had to share. And like, yes, we want, like putting it in an image here, we want to create a good life. We want to support people having a good life. We don't want them to have a good service. We want them to have a good life. Yes, I will not go into more details. I think I already said enough. Thank you very much. It was me, Vasilis Kalopis, together with my colleague Lukia Haidemenaki, who developed this presentation. I hope it was interesting, and if you have like any questions, we are open to hear your.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's a very good presentation. So thank you very much. It was very interesting. If you have any questions, please feel free to either put them in the Q&A or raise your hand. And then if you raise your hand, we'll promote you to speaker and then be able to ask your question yourself. Maybe while you're thinking about that or typing your question, I can ask a few questions. So maybe sort of starting at the top, we were talking about both policies and practice and the national policy framework. And you mentioned the national deinstitutionalization strategy that you worked with the national government and EASPD. Do you have any advice to other service providers in other countries who are maybe looking to replicate that cooperation with their national authorities? What would be your tips with working with them successfully?
Yeah, for me, the most important tip is like to follow a co-productive approach. Sometimes this sounds like theoretical, but it really makes the difference. If you try to impose something to the stakeholders, to the community of practice, I mean, it will not be successful, because people will come after that and will challenge it. But if you work together with the organizations, together with the stakeholders, in order to develop like every strategy, every plan, that makes a great difference. If I'm proud for one thing about this strategy is that like now that I can read it, I can see elements coming from different organizations, coming from different stakeholders that all have been included in this strategy, and really it does really make a difference. You have to listen carefully to the people who do this work in their everyday life and combine the experience, the field work with the policymakers and work together. It takes time, it's time consuming, it's tiring, it's challenging, but it does make a great difference. And for me, like, this is like the main tip I would like to share with you. And another thing would be also like, you know, sometimes we only look at numbers, like, okay, let's see how many supported living flats we will create. Let's see, okay, numbers is good. It's good to have like quantitative criteria, but we have to pay attention not to lose like the quality element, which is like sometimes missed when we only look at progress that can be depicted in numbers. So, I mean, these two things I would like to share.
I think it's really important that you focused on the quality aspects towards the end of the presentation, and also highlighting that flexibility was important. We talked about that in a event earlier this week for the Conference of State Parties, and having that person-centered approach. So with the continuing shift to choice and control for the person. So you also mentioned, maybe on a more practical level, the self-advocacy and giving persons with disabilities time to develop their sense of autonomy and self-advocacy. On more of a practical question, how does that work maybe at the beginning of the transition? If you have somebody who's maybe come from an institution, do they require more support to start with, or where are your people coming from? Are they coming from institutions?
Yeah, I think it starts from assessment, actually. Yeah. It starts from the assessment. You need like a very good person-centered assessment of the person, not a medical assessment, like what kind of disability does it have. You need a person-centered assessment. There are tools out there. If I can find one and share it like in the chat. It's a very nice tool that was developed. I think it was in Finland. It's called like A New Way Home. If I don't remember well, it's like it has some very nice guidelines how you can have a very good assessment of where you assess not only problems, but you assess also like possibilities. You assess like the good things, like what people can do well. So I think this is like the critical point, not to focus only on disadvantages, but to focus also on the positive aspect and work on that. So you start from assessment. You need a person-centered assessment first of all, and after you continue with like if we are talking about like people living in an institution, you need a transition plan. You need a transition plan where you will describe all the steps from the institution to community living. Okay, and after the person will move to a new setting, you need again a new person-centered plan, which will be localized like in the life and in the community where the people will live, because different communities give different opportunities. Okay, because like this is what we need in the community where the person lives. What does exist there? Is there a group of a singing group? Is there a swimming pool? Is there a community center? I mean, so you start from a person-centered assessment, you go to a transition plan, and after you go to a person-centered plan localized in the community where the person will live. I mean, that's like, I would say, like the three steps.
Thank you very much. Galina, do you want to ask your question?
Thank you so much for this presentation. This is definitely impressive presentation based on your experience. And you've mentioned that everything is based on assessment of needs and people's abilities. I have a short question. Besides the fact that you offer this entire support services spectrum, which is actually individualized, what do you do in order to find a job to people with disabilities? Do you have such services developed or not? And to what extent they are ready and open to start working? So what is your situation in this regard? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. We don't do that. I mean, we don't offer like this, let's say, specific service. What we do is that we collaborate with other organizations that provide this specific support for people that want and can be integrated in an inclusive like employment service. As a service, we don't do that. I mean, it would be nice to do like more things, but like, you know, sometimes there is like also reality and like time restrictions and like and human resources restrictions, you know, I mean, we don't do this service, but we collaborate with other services that they do that in Greece.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much again for a really great presentation. And so we'll move now from Greece to Hungary. And we have Sophia from Hand in Hand Foundation, and she'll be talking about their Swallow service. So I'll hand over you to Sophia.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. I really hope that you're gonna see my screen. Are you?
It's just loading, so if we give it a minute.
Okay. So thank you for the invitation. I'm Sophia Kogon from Hand in Hand Foundation from Hungary. We are working since 1993 for disabled persons, so it's almost 30 years of experience that we have. And I'm going to talk about two practice in Hungary. First, I want to introduce our inclusive living or supported living practice in 5 minutes, and then I'm going to talk about the Swallow service. It's a special babysitting service for families who have disabled children. And the swallow is a small bird who brings the summer, in case you do not know this specific bird. And this is an anagram of the service, so that's why we call it swallow. So in Hungary, it means the name of the service. Can you see my screen now? Because I'm only seeing the presentation, and if I change back. No,
yeah, we could see it. You've just popped back now to the Zoom screen. So if you go.
Okay, now you can see it. Okay, very good. Perfect. Okay, first of all, the inclusive living numbers in Hungary. I've pointed out that in Hungary we have 500,000 disabled persons in total. And from these persons, almost 3% live in institutes, different kind of institutes. In connection, due to Konstantina's presentation, we do have the legal framework. We also joined to the deinstitutionalization model. So now 3% of them, these people live in institutes, bigger or smaller one. And from these people who live in institutes, only 13% live in inclusive living service. This means almost 2,000 persons. So it's a very low number in total. As you can see, this is only like a model program in Hungary, although it is part of the social service system legally, and we hope that it will be supported and growing by the years to come. Our inclusive living service is a lot different than we saw in the Greece presentation, because we our people have lower support needs. It means that they are all working in the open labor market. They do have salaries, and that's how they can join to our inclusive living service and live in a flat, actually, in the city. It's special maybe because it actually means that they are living not in an institute in any aspects. They live in a flat in the middle of the city. They do have work, and they live their everyday life. Meanwhile, they are getting a lot of support and services from Hand in Hand Foundation. As you can see, we have now 13 persons in 7 apartments. Most of them live with their loved ones or partners or husbands or wives. Of course, we also use this complex assessment of needs before they enter into the service. So we are trying to focus on what they do want from the very beginning. Including the disabled persons in the planning. It means that when they apply to our inclusive living service, we are trying to find the perfect apartment together, and we are trying to do everything as they wish. For instance, of course, they would like to stay close to their parents or their loving one, then we will try to find a flat close to this area and not in the other part of the city. I emphasize the labor market service, which is very important. In case they have any problems in their workplace, we have a special labor market service, which only purpose is to help people work in the open labor market. So they will get help. They will have a mentor or mediator in the working place in order to set everything in order. Or if the person loses their job, then we are making every effort to get another one or help to get another one for them. Of course, we have an advocacy service, and we are giving support, personal and couple therapy, coaching, family therapy, and everything in order to support the individuals in their psychological well-being. As we see that the disabled person are often lonely, so we can also connect to the presentation before that we find it very, very important that we support them to get into the community and to help them to find a very good way to spend their free time, because we see that they are working, of course, but when they are get home, they often stuck in the apartment alone and they do have nothing to do. And so we are trying to help them by cooking courses or helping them to get sport activities and other stuff. I collected the pros. I mean the pros for the legislation framework. It's not for our program. As you can see, the legislation in Hungary exists since 2013. It's for the supported living apartments. I mean, this is what I meant in this slide. So the supported living is a true integration. It means that it is really away from the institute where people would live. It is separated the workplace and the service place. So actually the supported living has nothing to do with the institution where often people come from. And of course, it's very flexible, needs-driven, and based on the complex needs assessment, which is a new thing and has been developed by the deinstitutionalization process, and it's very good. And we also use this method by our clients. And I emphasize that the personal assistant and case manager, it's very important to make a distinction that in Hungary, there are no personal assistant care in a way like in the UK and other EU countries where somebody can help the persons in their home. In the supported living system, we have a case manager, which is very good because we do not have case manager in the institute. So this case manager is able to look the things from the inhabitant perspective and help to organize the life and the services around him or her in order to get the best result. The challenges that we face, as you can see, this is what we have is a model program. We would love to have people with higher support needs, but at the current situation, we are working towards to that goal. But right now, the main reason, for instance, that we have people only who have job in the open labor market, because the financiation of the service is very, very hard. So as you can see, the legislation is based on the institutional care. By this, I mean that, for instance, the authorities look at our office in order to check if it's fireproof and etc. And they have never looked the homes the individuals live in or such things. So it has a bit of problems there. There's a huge lack of force in the social sector. So where you mentioned that the life quality depends very much on the quality of services. We have a huge challenge in that area because there are simply no worker left in our sector, roughly speaking, but it's almost true. And we have a fragile service ring around the individuals as the accessibility of the mainstream services and the quality and quantity of social services are low in general. So it's actually a very creative work to help our clients to get everything what they would like to have achieved in their everyday life. So in a nutshell, that was the independent living, and this is our members and inhabitants who live in the flats, as you can see. And now I would like to move on to the swallow service. This is how you can see it, fecske in Hungarian. So the fecske means swallow and the name of the service. And it dreams of a world where families with disabled person can live a complete life in home. And the picture is of one of our families who live in the independent living. It's a very special family who have a child with Down syndrome. I wanted to emphasize that this service is needed very much in our country. And one moment before I talk about the mission of this fellow service, I would like to connect to the presentation before that this service is very much about shifting power from the service givers to the families, because when we talk about this service, so it's actually very easy to talk about it because it's a babysitting service for families, so everybody can imagine this. But when we talk about it with people who work in a social service, who work in institutes, it's very, very hard to make them understand that once they enter in the flat of the individuals, that the power is shifted to the service, to the people who are living there, and we play everything by their rules who are living in their apartment or flat. So the mission of this service is to provide flexible and reliable care for families with disabled children in the whole territory of Hungary. We do this model program for over 10 years. We have 10 service providers, as you will see it below. The values of this service is that the staff is very well prepared. It's very important that normal babysitters are often too afraid to take care of a disabled child because they do not have any knowledge what needs to be done about these children. So the staff needs to be very much prepared. The service needs to be needs to have high quality. It needs to be well organized, transparent, and accountable. When I talk about this service, I always tell that these things, that a service is well organized, transparent, and accountable, sound to be very normal in our life. But regarding the social services, it actually has been a new thing since we organizing this service, and it's still a very new point of view about this service. The network is also flexible and serves for the needs. It's open to whole day long, dynamic and cooperative, and acceptable and progressive for the families. As you can see, the current capacity of the service, I mentioned before that it should be a service that covers all the area in Hungary. It's sadly not true yet. We have 10 service providers in Hungary. This means that we can take care of half of the country, approximately. We have 280 service users, as it means roughly 280 families. Sometimes they have 2 children who get this service, so that's why the numbers are not the same maybe. 6,900 occasion per year happens a service giving. We have 103 caretaker, and as you can see, we had almost 30,000 service hour a year. One person can get 13 hours of help each month, more if it's necessary. I added this because you see it's not a lot. It's really, this service should be the cherry on the top, because it does not help to survive the everydays from Monday to Thursday, but it should help the parents to have so to say a breath to take to get out and have some free time while they are taking care about their disabled children. As Hand in Hand Foundation, we do not offer this service. We are, so to say, the think tank organization of this service. We are organizing and holding professional networks meeting for service providers. We are educating the caretakers with training sessions. We are operating the database system, which is a very important cornerstone of this service, that we are collecting data like crazy, and we want to know everything about the service, when it was used, why it was used, by who, and how many times, and etc. And we are also holding a yearly audit for the service providers in order to maintain the quality of the service. As you can see in the next slide, that Swallow service is a good example for social innovation, because we try to start from the needs and we try to manage the service around the needs, and we are trying to control the outputs. So it is really flexible and reliable, and the service is plannable, which is very important for our organization. This is just an example on the next slide that I share with you. It's like the dilemma that as you can see, it is financed by the Ministry of Human Resources in Hungary. So there's a limited amount of money for the service. And I share this slide so you can see that like by the dilemma, a few for many or a lot for few, we offer to the organization that they are doing by this decision, not by, like by their stomach, but looking at the online and standardized data collection, and they can see that how many hours are left in that month, how many is taken, and how can they really get in order to look at the needs, but still stay in the financial framework of the service. And it is not easy, and it's a very new method, because usually they would do like we are giving every hours, and then we have none left for the rest of the month. So it is very important learning process to the service providers, that they learn to deal with this kind of financial and database system. The next slide, you can just see that how the service is working. It's working like a normal babysitting service. And I would like to add that tiny little detail that, for instance, that this service was made for children. But of course, as time passed and we saw the needs, now it is open for everybody, I mean, or even for adult people. But we also see that for adult people, this service, which should be just the cherry on the top service support, it is not actually, because the other services are not working as they should, or as often as they should, So this swallow service takes the place of, for instance, a personal assistant service and so on. But if it's working like we would like to, then it's working just like the normal babysitting service. You can call the center sends the babysitter, it helps the family and go home, and everybody is quite happy. At the end of the slide, I wanted to show you some exceptions of the families' feedbacks, because I think it's very important to understand that that these hours, and these are really short hours in months, but they are really valued by the family members who can have actually a time to breathe, to stay alive, as they say, to go and have a walk, or they can have time for another or their other children, so they can actually keep their family in one piece while they are raising a disabled children or child. And I believe this was all. Maybe I was too quick. I didn't see the time. I'm sorry how much it has spent, but maybe you will have some questions, and I'm happy to answer everything about it, because there's a lot to say, but I didn't want to talk too much. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's another really interesting presentation. So thank you for telling us about your work. Again, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A or raise your hand. Maybe, so again, I can ask a few questions while you're waiting. Maybe the first one, a practical one, how does the referral process work? So you said that it started with the family members highlighting a need, and then you have, I think it was an interview. Does that need come from the family, or are they diagnosed?
You mean the swallow service?
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's starting with an interview where we visit the family home. It's very important that the interview is not in the institute or at the service provider center. So it's in their home. It's a long interview because we need to have a lot of information about the family, and then they can start the service. The main problem is the capacity of the service. We do not advertise this service at all because there's a limit of the service. So the service providers always say that families know about this service by each other because they met and they tell each other that it's a good service, but we cannot advertise because we have simply no more capacity in the budget.
And sorry if you already touched on it and I missed it, but how are you funded? Does it come from the government? They provide you with funding to do this?
From the government, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, from the Ministry of Human Resources, there's a yearly amount, and the people pay for this service, so the families pay for this service, and from this there's a low income for the service providers. Usually they use this income to give more and more hours for families who are in needs, because sometimes it works like normally, like every Monday somebody has an hour. But of course, if there's an emergency, if family members get into a hospital or anything else, then of course, this major situation, then they have to get more hours. So then it needs to be flexible.
Thank you very much. Elena, if you want to ask your question.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I wanted to specify something regarding the hand-to-hand service. You said that you have the placement, the accommodation service for people with disabilities. And what about this dwellings service? Is it available for people with disabilities that come from families or people with disabilities from institutions? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. now the families come, now the tenants come from families usually, because as I mentioned to you that our tenants right now have very low support needs. No, yes, low support needs, yes. So they are coming from families usually. When everything is good, then we would like to go to heading that we can accept tenants from institutions, but right now it's not the case yet. And it is also, as you can see, it's a very, as I said, it's a model program. So again, if we would advertise it, like 100 people would like to move in tomorrow, but it's not so easy, the financiation and the service around it. Thank you.
And if it's not, I think a complex question, how do you foresee that upscaling to support more persons with more complex support needs? Are you in communication with the government, or do you have sort of a rough plan for that, or is that a bit too complex for this webinar?
We have a plan, so we are doing a strategic planning. We have connection with municipalities in Budapest, and we have also conversation with the government. But right now, we think that maybe next year or the year to come, we can have like 10 more tenants in our system. So it's growing not so quickly. And the financiation is really hard because we are renting these flats for market price, and it's going like higher and higher. So right now we are like hoping that we can maintain the capacity of this year and see how we can proceed from this. But the plan is, to answer to your question, that as we have many people who have jobs in the urban labor market, and they are able to pay a higher fee for the service, so we can accept people who are having higher support needs and financing the situation like this. But it's only in our plans just yet.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for your presentation. And now we're going to, oh, Alina, do you have a question?
Wanted to ask something more. If the babysitting service is designed for all type of disabilities and for all ages of people with disabilities, or just for certain ages?
Thank you for the question. It is designed for everybody, so all types of disability and all types of needs. But of course, the limit of the service is that a child is taken care by the family home. So the general picture is, if a child with disabilities have a complex disability and high support needs, they end up usually in an institution. So in our circle, in our service, it's very rare to find a child who is taken care of by the family if they are having severe disabilities. Of course, this is not a good situation, but this is what we are seeing now. But generally, the service would be able to provide for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the questions. So now we'll move to Slovakia. And so the war in Ukraine has created a big influx of refugees who have been moving into Europe to find safety. Some of those refugees have disabilities. And so many service providers across Europe are being faced with having to support additional persons with disabilities from Ukraine, who not only have the support needs that they have usually, but also a different language and carrying the trauma of war and having to flee. So we now move to Lukáš Kovačák, sorry, very English, from Slovakia, who will be telling us a little bit about what they've been doing to support refugees with disabilities in Slovakia. So over to you. Thank you for joining us from your conference.
Indeed, the situation with the war in Ukraine, it's tragic and it's horrible, and is also providing new challenges for the social services. What we can see is what we are able to see that from the beginning of the war, we had 450,000 people crossing the border, out of which approximately 80,000 people were granted some kind of a refugee status. Slovakia in general doesn't provide asylum so easily, so there are only few of them. And we can generally say that we are a country, we are a transit country, yeah. And that was happening in the first 100 days. It was a very nice reaction and almost moving for us as a social people when our prime minister, our president went to the borders, and the main message to the refugees were that you are safe, yeah, we will take care of you. And that sparkled a huge amount of solidarity in the society, and the combination of material help and the volunteer help was so big that it almost clogged the system. Yeah, we only have 3 border crossings with Ukraine, and if there is one which is very big, and it was not that well organized, and organizations were almost fighting for each refugee to be helped in the sense that there were just too many teams in the same moment. And of course, I think to some extent it was serving the people and as well as the volunteers as some kind of a coping mechanism. Yeah, that I have to do something, I have to help somehow. Yeah, and as the border was the initial point of entry, many of the people, many of the material went there. What was happening that we immediately started to help the refugees, and somehow found out that it was not needed at the moment, refugees with disabilities, because immediately we wanted to help and provide the social services and deal with their situation and whatever was what we were thinking is needed for them, or they were telling that it's needed for them. Very often the result, however, was after 2 or 3 days of panic calls. Oh my God, there is a senior couple on the border, and the lady is 82 and the husband is 86, and he's using a wheelchair. We need to place. After 2 days of normal shelter, they said, well, we have a daughter in Prague and she's coming to pick us up. And so we learned that the main thing in the beginning, first 100 days, was to provide information to people, provide them the dignified shelter for a few days. If it's for a person using a wheelchair, okay, wheelchair accessible, but didn't really need to be super specific, super social services individually designed for them, because very often they were or moving forward, or they said, we do not want to go to social services. We do not know what we want, and we need some time just to get somehow together. Very often they required some health assistance, not too much if they were not in the medical conditions of a kidney disease and so on, but I would say more like this first aid, and very rarely they needed social care. That's something which we were seeing the first 100 days, 2 or 3 months. What we are seeing now is that the narrative of Slovakia is being the same, and our president said it 2 weeks ago in Ukraine Parliament. We will take care. Yeah, we are taking care of your wives and of your children, and we will be doing that because we are fighting for us. We are fighting for our freedom. However, in practice, that the help is very often delayed and is rather decreasing. Yeah, the state is rather slow. And what we were hoping that will happen, that after our initial help, the state will kick in. I would say that there is still a place for state to step in. What many of the organizations are also seeing, that the material and volunteer support is decreasing almost to zero. People, of course, are tired, and also the needs of the refugees are changing, and we are somehow changing into the country where we are transit country, but transit country where people are staying. And they are searching for work, they are searching on information on integration, they are searching for long-term accommodation, and after these few months also for already health assistance. Because after 2 months of shock, now their older health problems, which were maybe not that urgent in the beginning, are reappearing again. And we are also searching. They're also searching now for social care. Yeah, if they came with their older mother, and now everything is okay. Now suddenly, because she's no more in the status of shock, suddenly the Alzheimer is again getting stronger. Yeah, or children with disabilities who somehow were able to go through that. Okay, you have to be strong. We need to do. Now they're acting out. Of course, they're acting out coming from the trauma. So we are seeing the change of the needs. However, as state is, I believe, not doing enough. We are also dealing with the situations when there is simply not enough food. Yeah, and organizations have to step in, providing some kind of food banks, relating on the regular Slovak people, and doing it in this way that you go to the shop and you just bring it to the voluntary place next door, which of course is not a systematic solution. What we are able to see and what's happening is that international organizations are stepping in. UNHCR is providing benefit, but the benefit is approximately 80 euros per person for a month. So you can imagine that this is not something which would solve the situation. Still, Slovakia before was providing 67 euros. Just to paint the picture, that we're really discussing a serious situation of people having 67 euros or now 80 euros for a month, which is completely crazy. And free organization of UNHCR, UNICEF, and IOM got together and somehow put the help in the sense that IOM is helping adult people with disability, UNICEF is helping mothers with children with disability, which is significant part of the population of disability people, because many of the refugee populations are simply mothers with children. But we also have to say that this will happen. It's not happening now. Yeah? We are in June. It's 111th day of the war, and the cash support has not been distributed yet to the people with disability. Yeah, they were getting this 80 euros, but they should be getting 508, and this is still in the process, in the transition, in the discussion, and it's simply late. So what we were doing as organizations, we somehow stepped in and said that, okay, we need to do something. Yeah, we know how difficult it is to have a disability in the normal conditions, and in the war conditions and the refugee position with different languages, so long, even harder. So we have several layers of a national organization, a national coalition, I would say, which is called Who Will Help Ukraine, where they are able to coordinate the help and the donors with the refugees. And we as a specialized organizations, as a Socio Forum, or then the local organization, as my organization, or organizations from Western Slovakia, are able to coordinate each other. That, okay, if there is a case and somehow it doesn't have a solution, then we start to use our contacts and our phone lines to solve it. We are also able to see churches being very active and somehow also effective, yeah, because they are able to, they have these communities. So very often they are able to say that, okay, we need to house someone, and we don't have a place anymore. So we would call the assistant to a bishop. That's a really great person to address, assistant to a bishop, who is usually younger, very flexible, and we have really we were able to provide great help with that. Still, we are able to see that as we moved from the phase 1 to phase 2. We were able to draw some lessons from the phase 1, which was chaotic and it was not easy. We could see that people loved making databases. That was that was immediate reaction of whoever was having any kind of meeting. Let's have a database, okay? And we ended up in the situation when we actually needed a database of databases. Okay? So if you get yourself into these situations, I would like you to be aware that this is one of the coping mechanisms for people how to deal with stress. Somehow then dealing with state is uneasy sometimes because they all have time, always have a time, but also not organizations being limited in the ability to help before, yeah, in the capacity that we could see that now, yeah, that we are able to have some programs, some projects, and the organizations will just say, sorry, our capacity is limited. We are not able to help. As a result, we have problems with planning because everything is uncertain. We have problems with staffing. We have problems with cash flow because one day you have almost nothing. Next day you have 20,000 euros to spend within 2 weeks. Yeah, which is of course difficult if you want to spend it wisely. And now we are moving to phase 2, when we are a transit country where people are actually staying, and somehow disability people are missing. If you make the percentages that we have 70,000 people living in Slovakia being Ukrainian refugees, if whatever percentage we take, if it's 1%, it's 700 people. If 3% with mental disability, it will be 2,000. 7%, it will be 5,000. However, we at the moment are able to see approximately 250 people only being registered for the disability help. And we can see the reason for that on our authorities not being active enough in promoting this possibility of help. And as a result, having a really low numbers. Therefore, we are within the phase 2, moving into the position of creating some kind of, and I do not like all these platform coalitions, whatever, because it just takes too much time. So we are using our personal relationships, calling each other. Do you have a project? Do you have a project? Do you have some budget? Okay, and then having one meeting when we said, okay, whoever has a disability in Slovakia coming from Ukraine, it is not possible for him to be left behind. So we are starting with awareness campaign within our organizations and actually searching these people, because we know that there should be around 2,000 or 3,000. If we have 300, we are still missing 2,700. And we are also somehow trying to prepare our society for that it will take time, they will need help. Of course, we are getting the feedback of course, now Ukrainians get everything for free. Yeah, so we need to be aware of that and somehow also reshape the message that it is not Ukrainian with in problem of accommodation. Let's help all the people in the housing, housing their problems, because these were problems we had in Slovakia before. Not enough accommodation, not enough housing, not enough flats, and everything just got magnified by the Ukrainian crisis. At the moment, I think for the summer, we are more or less okay, in the sense that the cash schemes from IOM and UNICEF will kick in. These people with a severe disability will get approximately 500 euros per month. And we are somehow fearing this September when this support will end. We know our Slovak Republic is sometimes slightly slow. So that's something what we are always trying to somehow predict that, okay, as we were working really hard in March and April, now July, August, September is covered. We know that we will have a problem in October, November, December. So we have to start working now to be able to cover it in the future. It's only 3 or 4 organizations. We try to get together to know each other personally. So our discussions would be open, would be trustworthy. There is no way for anyone to make any money on any of these projects. And I'm saying that openly because sometimes that's the point. Huh? Of course, that they are now there because they got $1 million from UNICEF. Yeah, well, for sure, but 900,000 they will distribute. Yeah, and by, for example, sharing the budgets, we are able to say, well, if you are able to find some extra money there, please be my guest. Yeah, but we are putting extra effort into building of this trust, so the coalition would be effective. And then actually we are coming to the to the point that, okay, everything is more or less getting in the point of working. We just need to implement it, which is of course another problem, yeah, because so far it was more about dealing with the ministry, dealing with the international organizations, trying to get in touch with these individual cases where when help was lacking. And we know that some of the people are, I would say, not disabled enough. They will not get money because their disability is mild. So we are using the project money and the foundation money to cover those needs, which are smaller, but for that person are crucial. Yeah, so even if it's some kind of mechanical part for 200 euros for a wheelchair, but person will not get the support because but he's still able to walk, so he's not disabled enough. Then we will cover it from our private funds, getting from the very often from EASPD or EDF or Christian organizations from outside. And by coordinating 4 or 5 organizations, we are able to say that, okay, there is no one who would get the help 5 times just for him being too smart or really great with papers. And we haven't seen these cases too much. But on the other hand, we are able to ensure if you go through all the network and there is no one, state will not help, authority will not help, the region will not help, you do not have a family, there always is some kind of a stop. There is always some last stop help, and that is possible because we were working on the projects in March and April. We are really worried about the autumn, when of course everything will be more difficult because of the days being colder and society being more tired, social care providers being more exhausted. We do not see many Ukrainians living in the residential services at the moment, approximately 90. Many of them are trying to stay on their own or with their families. And we expect that especially the community services will be needed as the next step in September, when they say, it is okay for us to live this way, but it's too much already for us. We have to work. We have the same situation we have with regular people, not the refugees. So we are signaling that to the ministry that, okay, this will be a problem. And if we want to protect social services from overflowing, then this is something which we have to address. Of course, we expect that they will be late and only start something in maybe January. So for 2 or 3 months, we will need to step in again. And that's something what we actually see as an opportunity, because for many years we were telling the state that, okay, in 10 years you will see another 5,000 seniors with Alzheimer who will need your care, and then you will be screwed. You have to act now and so long, yeah, and you have to come up with community services and whatever. And now we are able to see that now, yeah. So we are using that as opportunity first to tell them, well, we told you so. So you cannot pretend that, oh, we didn't know. Because back in 2000, we told you that in 15 years, suddenly you will need more beds. And now you need more beds. And it's not Alzheimer people, but it's refugee people. But still, the result is the same, that you need more beds. And the only way out of that is to use the community services. So let's do that, yeah? We need to be aware that it will take time for the state to react. And therefore, we need to push now. And so after we covered phase 2, which is happening now, international aid is about to be distributed. National coalition of help is about to cover the holes in this help. If somebody will not get it, we are able to help. But at the same moment, we are preparing for October till December to somehow be again a first aid when the state will, as usually after the summer holiday, oh, look at that, there is a problem. Okay? So that's the initial situation. And in the meantime, what we are trying to have in mind, keep in mind that there are many stories of individual help, of individual heroism, of directors of the social homes helping, I would say, unofficially. And that's why also that's also something we are searching for. That if there is somebody who helps refugees, and therefore these refugees do not need help and they do not register and so on and so long. We want to know about that person, so we would support him or her, so the help would be able to continue, instead of them being in this situation of, well, you should count twice before you start helping. Now they are your problems. Yeah. So again and again, we are coming to the same point of, we are a small country. Social care is slightly understaffed and underpaid, so we all know each other. So let's use that as a benefit of, okay, there is some money, and if you need that, let's use it before you will crash. So that would be a view from Slovakia.
Thank you very much. So I think the big message that I'm getting is forward planning is very important, and you're having to rely on your more interpersonal relationships with other organizations rather than the government. When you've gone to them and you've said, okay, we foresee this problem in a few months, we already have some people living in as residential settings, but there's going to be more. What sort of reaction have you had? I mean, up until now, it sounds like the government have been a lot more hands off. Do you expect that to move, or?
I think they are somehow hoping that it will solve itself and the problem will disappear, and they are using the ad hoc data of, well, I just spoke to the border and I heard that there are more Ukrainians going back to Ukraine, whatever, because many of the people from Ukraine are now going there and for. And so at the moment, the situation on border is 3,000 people coming every day, 3,000 people are leaving every day, which in my book means that the number of refugees stays the same instead of decreasing. Yeah, but they are only telling us the one thing of, well, they are leaving. Well, no, they are going to see what's left in Ukraine and then coming back, because very often they have nowhere to go. And there is no house, there is nothing. Yeah. So for that we have to have data, because if we get into talks with government loves talking. Yeah, but we have to have data saying that, well, this is the number, this is the number, this is the number. Very often they are surprised. How come do you have the numbers? And we are like, well, by picking up the phone, you call someone and so long. So we are again using the personal relationships to get those numbers. But without data, we would be lost. And then we are getting more official in the sense that we will talk to you once informally, once formally, and then we will send you a letter, in the sense that we know that you need to have a letter to be afraid that we will tell you in September that you had a letter in August or in July and so on. Okay? So it's a mix of tools. Some of the things I do agree with the government that we were warning and that they didn't happen. And I think they just got lucky. But many of the things we are able to actually see what's happening in other countries, or it's happening with countries with other refugee populations like Lebanon. Yeah, we are not unique. We do not need to reinvent the wheel, because we know that first phase, everybody wants to help. Second phase, everybody is tired. Third phase, people are unhappy and are asking the government why they are only helping the refugees. Fourth phase, attacks on the refugee points. We could see that in Germany, in Austria, everywhere. So that's why we are reshaping the message that let's help every family with only one parent, whether it's Slovak or it's Ukrainian mother whose husband had to stay in Ukraine. And with the state, yeah, I would suggest data, informal relationships, and then formal procedures of, okay, here is the letter and please react. And there is no answer in 30 days, there is a reminder. And as a lady who built the planetarium in my town is saying, Lucas, it's not about who is able to do more, but who is able to do longer. And it seems that we are in this for a long time. So we are also somehow trying to take care of each other. Yeah, that, okay, now you have to take a break because you are getting snappy because you work 4 months in a row. And if we want you to be somehow contributing in the next months, let me cover for you. So that's also helpful, being a coalition based on the personal relationships.
Yeah, I think that's very important. That I think a lot of us who have been working on this and I've only been doing it from an office, but for people who are on the ground and having to face this every day, burnout is a very real issue and challenge that we need to be really careful of if we can continue to support people and provide these services. I see our colleagues from Moldova and Hungary nodding along. I think there's a shared experience. Definitely, I know from Hungary that the identification or the self-identification and announcement of persons with disabilities is a big issue, and that impacts the process of being able to support these people. Galina, if you want to step in with your comment or question.
Doar un singur comentariu, apreciez pentru informație, au fost o generalizare, o incursiune la toate aspectele.
Full overview that we need to take into account when dealing with support for the refugees. And I'm totally agree with Lucas, it's a very complex and demands a lot of efforts, and each case necessitates an individual approach. And every time when you think that you have solved the case, but apparently in a few days, new dilemmas appear in terms of resources, capacities. And at this stage, I agree that those involved as a civil society in offering support to the refugees, must admit we are a little bit tired, but there comes a next stage following summer. The winter comes, and we will be needing additional support for them during the winter time. We cooperate with many organizations because refugees' needs are more complex, involving documentation, necessities that we did not encounter so far and did not envision so far. The collaboration between civil society and the donors community, local authorities and central authorities should be coordinated in such a way so that the exchange of information and resources is available.
Thank you. Elena?
I wanted to express my solidarity and appreciation for the efforts Slovakia has made and the civil society organization and the government, and just wanted to find out, or just an aspect, was Slovakia financed from the government, or does it have services for people with disabilities in order to provide personal assistance, personal care? Because sometimes when a family needs such kind of support, is the government able to offer this sort of support to those families?
So Lucas he's joined by his phone, so he couldn't hear the translation. So I'll just say it quickly now. But you were asking if there is funding from the Slovakian government to fund personal assistance. Is that for refugees or just in general for persons with disabilities who are in Slovakia? Yeah, okay. So Lucas, is there funding from the ministry to support personal assistance? Yeah.
Generally, it's people with status of the temporary refugee have the status of Slovak citizens for the social services. So whatever we are getting as a Slovak people, they are also entitled to get. The only difference now is that the financing of this support was taken over by international organizations for 3 or 4 months to somehow ease the cash flow on the Slovak state budget. Generally, it's the help which is given to the carers of the people with disability, and it doesn't matter who the carer is. Of course, very often that will be a family member, and there is no difference whether it's a family member or it's not a family member. It will always be this 508 euros. Once this will end and they will get themselves into the Slovak, the proper Slovak system, yeah, then the same as the Slovak people, if the care is provided by the family member, sometimes it's a little bit lower, yeah, especially if the family member is retired and so on, yeah. But they will have the same conditions as the Slovak people, and now they are very, very similar. Yeah, our people get around 500, they get 508. Yeah, so there is not too much differences, and I think that's what's somehow helping us from overflowing the social services, that so many of the disability people are taking care of their family member by their family member. The problem is that only approximately 200 of them applied for this disability support. So this is our next step, yeah, to go and do not let it like that. We know there should be around 2,000 of them. So we need to again reactivate our personal relationships, call each labor office, it's approximately 70 of them, to re-ask them, did you say to everyone, is there anyone in your village, is there anyone you know of who is not getting this support? Because after 4 months it will disappear. Yeah, so it's now or never. And the decision of this National Coalition of Help is that we have to do that. Yeah. So our biggest problem is not having enough money. It's more about this self-declaration and not knowing what they are entitled to.
So just to clarify, sorry, when you're saying they're having this 500 euros of support, that is money that they have to spend on anything, food, travel, subsistence, or is that like a personal budget where they then can come to a support service and say, I need this personal assistance or something else?
Well, one thing is that it hasn't been paid out yet because, as we said, systems are still being prepared.
Yeah.
But it should be cash. It should be cash sent to the bank account. And
they can use it how they want, either to come to you for a service. Okay.
Yeah, but that would create a problem very often because social services, residential social services, are very often more expensive. So that's why we are also speaking to the ministry that if we do not want people from Ukraine with severe disabilities or severe health conditions be living in the hotels with Alzheimer, we need to have some kind of a state scheme for social providers to be covering the client's part of the fee. Yeah, because if usually Slovak seniors are paying 600-700 euros to stay in the senior home, Ukrainian refugees do not have anything. So our law will say that they should pay 0 because they have nothing. But then the senior home is in a big trouble, especially now with the energy and everything going up. So we are also speaking to the ministry that, okay, now we have 90 people in the services. Maybe we will have 400 or 500 because generally they do not want to go to our social services. They want to stick together as a family. So let's make some kind of support for the senior, for the social providers, for the fee coverage. But that's only, and then we will use that as a pilot of some kind of personal budget, which we do not have yet. And we expect that this state project should be happening maybe, I would say November, December, but I know my republic that we will be happy if it will be in January.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any final questions for the last 5 minutes? Okay, thank you very much, Lukasz. And thank you very much to all of our speakers. Again, 3 very interesting practices. Thank you for your time. I see in the chat, Petagma, you've shared your email address if anybody wants to contact you. And as we said, the recordings will be available online. Galina, I hand over to you to close the webinar.
În primul rând, vreau să apreciez foarte mult tot efortul și deschiderea colegilor de la EASPD pentru a împărtăși deci experiența în cadrul dezvoltării serviciilor de suport pentru persoane cu dizabilități, experiențe de lucru în suport cu refugiații cu dizabilități din Ucraina. Suntem solidari și cred că vom avea ulterior și colaborări cu mai mari, mai dezvoltate cu colegii de la EASPD, cu organizațiile membre EASPD. Aceste ateliere cred că vor contribui la acest lucru. Ca și totalizări, aș vrea să menționez că au fost promovate deci acele schimbări în documente de politici care se vreau ca și politici inclusive din perspectiva asigurării unui trai decent, calitativ pentru persoane cu dizabilități. Mi-a plăcut motoul pe care l-a oferit Petagma, vreau o viață, nu serviciu. Într-adevăr, serviciile nu trebuie.
Indeed, the services should not change the life, but should contribute to the quality of life and provide support where it is needed to people with disabilities, so that people with disabilities can feel that they are an active member of the communities in order to participate actively in community. It's difficult to go from politics into the implementation of these policies, because it is needed a lot of effort and involvement at all levels. It's important to monitor everything you have proposed yourself in terms of promoting people's rights in a quality and efficient manner, and be present every time with your eyes, with your soul, because we are all human beings, and lots of things are exposed in a way, but implemented in another way. And our role as a civil society, for those who are involved in helping people with disabilities, is important to support all the way, to have a great involvement and a joint effort between civil services, and the implementation is key. The implementation of policies is key in order to improve the standard of living of people with disabilities. The support of families presented by Sofia are very precious to us, because we can to transpose new ideas in the Republic of Moldova. And we would like in the future to have several workshops that EASPD organization will be able to present their experiences. We have things to learn from each other, and we could identify new services, innovative services that will respond promptly to the needs of people with disabilities and cover that part of support that has not been yet identified. And all these things are happening only then when we communicate together, exchange information, and understand the needs, and always keep developing them. Only then the innovative services are available to people with disabilities. Referring to the information to Slovenia, we are in total solidarity with Ukrainian refugees, and appreciate the support to all the refugees, but things are in dynamic. We understand we don't know what will happen in the future. It is a situation, we are currently in a situation when things are fuzzy, but with new efforts, I think we should be united, and we need to provide help to people, people with disabilities. I mean, refugees is something quintessential for us as an organization in our country. The policies that are developed in terms of social assistance should envision also action measures and situations for helping people with disabilities in urgent situations, in emergency situations. And this thing, I think, is important and essential. All these measures should be ensured by budgets and financial adequate resources, and by involvement of the actors involved in policymaking at all levels. We thank you very much. I think Alina would like to have the floor now. I would like to thank all the speakers for the experiences passed to us today, sincerely, and lots of details for the services providers. I would like to thank the members of EASPD members to participate in this workshop. And I would like to thank all EASPD team for the kind support provided so far and for today's event. Thanks a lot for participating today in this joint event.
Thank you. And I'll just give some final thanks to Dimitri from the EASPD team, who's been hosting us today and doing the technical support, to our captioners and to our interpreters who've made sure that we could understand each other. Thank you for joining, and thank you for the cooperation and for our speakers. Have a good day, everybody, and hopefully we'll see you soon in another webinar.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.